Captain Jake Morrison gripped the armrest of his command chair as the view screen lit up with dozens of alien warships. They had appeared out of nowhere, surrounding the New Horizon and her sister colony ships like wolves circling prey. Jake had been a military pilot before volunteering for the colony mission. He recognized a threat when he saw one. "Sir, we're being hailed," said Lieutenant Amy Reed from the communications station. Her voice was steady, but Jake could hear the tension underneath. "Put them through." The alien that appeared on screen was unlike anything humanity had ever seen. Its skin shimmered with colors that seemed to shift in the light, and its eyes were cold and calculating. When it spoke, the translation software turned its words into something Jake could understand, but the tone was unmistakable. This was not a friendly greeting. "Human vessels, you are in violation of Galactic Council territory. Power down your engines and prepare to be boarded. Resistance will result in immediate destruction." Jake felt his jaw tighten. They were 3 months into their journey to establish a new colony on Kepler 442b. They had checked and rechecked the star charts. This system was uninhabited, unclaimed. And now these aliens were treating them like criminals. "This is Captain Morrison of the colony ship New Horizon. We detected no territorial markers in this region. Our mission is peaceful. We're simply passing through on our way to. Your ignorance of council law is not an excuse. You have 60 seconds to comply." Jake looked around his bridge. Young faces stared back at him. Scientists, engineers, families sleeping in the habitation modules below. 1,500 people on his ship alone. 2 more colony ships in formation nearby, carrying another 500 each. "Lieutenant Reed, send a tight beam back to Earth. Let them know what's happening." "Tactical, what's our status?" Lieutenant Tom Bradley checked his console. "Shields are online, but they're designed for micrometeorite impacts, not weapons. Sir, their ships are powering up some kind of energy cannons. I'm reading massive power spikes across their fleet." Jake made his decision. "Raise shields. All ships, defensive formation. I repeat, do not fire first. We're not starting a war today." The New Horizon shields came online with a low hum that Jake could feel through the deck plates. On the view screen, the alien commander's expression changed. Those strange eyes narrowed. "You dare raise weapons against the Council? Your species will learn the price of defiance." "Wait, we're not," Jake started, but it was too late. The alien warships opened fire. Brilliant lances of purple energy crossed the darkness of space in seconds. The first salvo hit the colony ship Prometheus. Her shields lasted maybe 2 seconds before collapsing. The energy beams punched through the hull like it was paper. Jake watched in horror as the Prometheus broke apart. Atmosphere vented into space in glittering clouds. Escape pods launched desperately, but the alien ships were already firing again. The second colony ship, the Destiny, tried to run. She didn't make it 1,000 kilometers before she was cut in half by focused fire. "Evasive maneuvers! Get us out of here!" Jake shouted. The New Horizon's engines roared to life, but she was a colony ship, not a warship. She was built for endurance, not speed. The alien vessels moved to intercept, their weapons charging again. Then something unexpected happened. A massive energy surge erupted from somewhere nearby, scrambling sensors across the battlefield. In the confusion, the New Horizon managed to jump to faster-than-light speed, leaving the alien fleet behind. But the damage was done. 2,000 people were gone, murdered for the crime of being in the wrong place at the wrong time. 3 days later, the New Horizon limped back into Earth orbit. Jake Morrison walked into a military briefing room where President Robert Hayes was waiting. The president was a former Air Force general himself, a man who understood what had happened out there. Hayes watched the footage from the New Horizon's bridge cameras. His face was carved from stone as he saw the colony ships die. When the recording ended, he sat in silence for a long moment. "How many survivors?" Hayes finally asked. 12 escape pods. We recovered 8. That's 93 people out of 2,000, Jake said quietly. Hayes closed his eyes. Then he opened them, and Jake saw something dangerous there. Cut all communications with the Galactic Council. Recall every ship, Every probe, every satellite we have beyond Mars' orbit. Bring them all home. His advisor, a nervous man named Dennis Porter, cleared his throat. Sir, if we go dark like that, they'll think we're preparing to surrender. They might see it as weakness. Hayes stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the stars. Let them think whatever they want. What they don't know is that we've been working on something. Something they've never seen before. Get me General Patricia Stone at DARPA. And get me the head of the Dark Matter Research Division. Sir, that project is still theoretical, Porter protested. The math works, but we've never actually built. Then it's time we stop theorizing and start building, Hayes interrupted. His voice was quiet but hard as steel. They wanted to show us our place in the galaxy. Fine. We'll show them what happens when you back humanity into a corner. We're not surrendering. We're preparing. Jake Morrison stood at attention. Sir, permission to volunteer for whatever comes next. Hayes looked at him and nodded. Permission granted, Captain. You and every survivor from those ships. You've earned the right to be part of this. The Council thinks they've won. They think we're just another primitive species they can push around. He turned back to the window, his reflection grim in the glass. They're about to learn that humans don't forget. And we sure as hell don't forgive. 5 years had passed since the massacre. 5 long years of silence from humanity. The Galactic Council had assumed the humans had learned their lesson and retreated to their little corner of space like frightened children. They were wrong. Scout Commander Theron sat in his observation vessel at the edge of the Sol system, watching and waiting. His orders were simple. Monitor human activity and report any signs of military buildup. For 5 years, his predecessors had sent the same report back to the Council. Nothing. The humans had pulled back all their ships, abandoned their outer colonies, and gone completely dark. But today, something was different. Theron's sensors flickered, showing a massive energy spike near Jupiter's orbit. Then nothing. Then another spike, this time near Mars. His 4 eyes widened as he checked the readings again. Human vessels were moving through space, but not in any way he had ever seen before. A ship would appear on his sensors for just a moment, a solid contact, and then it would simply vanish. Not jump to hyperspace, which would leave a characteristic energy signature. Not cloak, which would still show a slight distortion in the background radiation. It just ceased to exist, and then reappeared somewhere else entirely. Somewhere that should have taken hours or days to reach. This is impossible, Theron muttered. His manipulator appendages dancing across the control panel. He recorded everything, knowing his superiors would never believe him without proof. Then he saw something that made his blood run cold. A human warship, larger than anything they had built before, simply appeared in the middle of an asteroid field. It was heading straight for a massive space rock. Thousands of tons of solid iron and stone. Theron expected the ship to adjust course or fire weapons to clear a path. Instead, the ship passed through the asteroid like it was made of smoke. The massive space rock didn't explode. It didn't shatter. The human warship simply occupied the same space as the asteroid for a moment, and then emerged on the other side completely undamaged. The asteroid was still intact, still tumbling through space as if nothing had happened. Theron's appendages froze over his controls. In all his years of service, in all the battles the Council had fought across 1,000 star systems, he had never seen technology like this. He immediately began transmitting his data back to the Council homeworld, marking it as Priority 1. Deep beneath the surface of Earth, in a facility that didn't exist on any official maps, Dr. Raymond Webb watched the same event on his monitors. He was a thin man who hadn't seen sunlight in 3 years, preferring the cold, sterile environment of the laboratory to the world above. But what he lacked in social skills, he made up for in raw genius. Beautiful, he whispered, watching the prototype warship complete its test run. Absolutely beautiful. General Patricia Stone stood behind him, arms crossed over her chest. She was a woman who had spent 30 years in the military, fought in 2 wars, and lost count of how many classified projects she had overseen. But this one was different. This one would change everything. Explain it to me again, Doctor. In terms a soldier can understand, she said. Webb pulled up a holographic display showing the structure of space itself. Dark matter makes up about 85% of all matter in the universe. It's invisible, undetectable by normal means, but it's everywhere. It's in this room right now, passing through us, through the Earth, through everything. For centuries, we knew it existed because we could see its gravitational effects, but we could never interact with it directly. He manipulated the display, showing streams of dark matter flowing through space like invisible rivers. 5 years ago, we were desperate. We needed an advantage, something the Council had never seen. So we started thinking differently. What if we could manipulate what we couldn't see? What if we could use the very fabric of the universe that everyone else ignored? Stone nodded slowly. And you figured it out. We figured it out, Webb confirmed. Our ships don't just travel through normal space anymore. They can shift partially into dark matter space. In that state, they're practically invisible. Normal sensors can't detect them because they're not entirely in our dimension. They can pass through solid objects because in dark matter space, those objects don't really exist. He pulled up footage of the warship phasing through the asteroid. And the best part? They can move faster than light without entering hyperspace. Dark matter doesn't interact with normal matter, so there's no friction, no resistance. A ship in dark matter space can travel distances that would take weeks in normal space and do it in minutes. Stone allowed herself a small smile. And the weapons? Dark matter cannons, Webb said, his eyes gleaming with scientific pride. They fire concentrated streams of dark matter that we've learned to make solid for just a fraction of a second. Long enough to pass through shields and armor, and then become solid again inside the target. The ship tears itself apart from the inside out. How many vessels do we have operational? Stone asked. Webb checked his data pad. 50 warships fully operational and tested. Their crews have completed training and they're ready for deployment. We have another 100 in various stages of construction. Within 6 months, we'll have a fleet of 200 ships that can go anywhere, anytime, without being detected. Stone walked to the observation window overlooking the construction bay. Below, in a massive cavern hollowed out from solid rock, she could see the warships being assembled. They were sleek and black, designed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Even in normal space, they would be hard to spot visually. The Council thinks we're beaten, she said quietly. They think we're just another primitive species they can push around whenever they feel like it. They killed 2,000 of our people and didn't even bother to send an apology. She turned to face Webb, and her expression was hard. We gave them 5 years to make things right. 5 years to reach out, to explain, to show even the smallest bit of remorse. They gave us nothing but silence and arrogance. Webb nodded. So what happens now? Stone's smile was cold. Now we show them what happens when you underestimate humanity. The Council wanted to see what we're capable of when we're threatened. They wanted to know our place in the galaxy. She looked back at the warships below. Let's teach them. Let's show them exactly what humanity can do when we stop playing nice. Admiral Kyle Turner of the Galactic Council Enforcement Division felt confident as his fleet of 40 warships took up position around the small human mining colony on Titan's largest moon. This would be easy. Humans were weak, primitive. They had proven that 5 years ago when they ran home with their tails between their legs. Sir, the mining colony is hailing us, his communications officer reported. Kyle waved a dismissive appendage. Ignore them. Scan the facility. I want to know how many humans are down there and what kind of resources they're extracting. The Council has decided it's time these primitives paid tribute for operating in our galaxy. His tactical officer worked the sensors. Reading approximately 200 human life signs, the facility appears to be extracting helium-3 and rare metals. Minimal defenses. A few mining lasers that could be repurposed as weapons, but nothing that could threaten us. Kyle settled back in his command throne. This was going to be the easiest assignment of his career. Decades of service had taught him that primitive species always followed the same pattern. You showed up with overwhelming force, made demands, and they surrendered. Simple. Open a channel to the colony, he ordered. Transmit our demands for tribute and unconditional. He never finished the sentence. Space itself seemed to tear open in front of his fleet. Not the swirling vortex of a hyperspace window. Not the shimmer of ships dropping out of faster-than-light travel. This was different. Reality simply split apart like fabric being ripped, and through the tears came ships. Black warships materialized from absolute nothingness. One moment there was empty space, the next moment there were vessels. Dozens of them. They were sleek and dark, seeming to absorb light rather than reflect it. Cal had commanded fleets for 30 years, and he had never seen ship designs like these. "Sensors, give me a reading on those vessels," he shouted. His tactical officer's voice was panicked. "Sir, sensors are barely registering them. I'm getting massive gravitational readings, but the ships themselves keep flickering in and out of detection. Targeting systems can't get a lock. It's like they're not entirely here." Kyle's confidence evaporated. Battle stations. All ships. Defensive formation. The human warships hung in space, silent and menacing. Then a communication channel opened. A human woman's face appeared on the view screen. She looked calm, almost bored. Her uniform was crisp and military, her dark hair pulled back in a tight bun. The name tag read Commander Lisa Grant. "Council Fleet," she said in a voice that was cold and controlled. "You are in violation of human sovereign territory. You have 10 seconds to power down your weapons and withdraw to the edge of this system. If you do not comply, we will consider this an act of war." Kyle felt his blood pressure spike. How dare this primitive speak to him like that? He was a decorated admiral of the Galactic Council. His fleet had conquered a dozen star systems. These humans had been traveling in space for barely 100 years. "You think you can threaten the Council?" Kyle roared. "You're outnumbered and outgunned. I have 40 warships. I can see maybe 20 of your vessels. The mathematics are simple, human. Surrender now or—" "5 seconds," Lisa Grant interrupted, her expression never changing. "Fire everything," Kyle screamed. "I want those ships turned to debris." Every weapon in his fleet fired at once. Energy cannons that could melt through a planet's crust. Plasma torpedoes that burned at 1,000,000 degrees. Kinetic railguns firing projectiles at a fraction of light speed. Enough firepower to destroy a small moon, all focused on the human ships. The weapons hit their targets. Kyle saw the impacts on his view screen, and then his heart sank. The energy beams passed straight through the human warships like they were made of smoke. The plasma torpedoes flew through the hulls and kept going, detonating harmlessly in empty space beyond. The kinetic rounds didn't even slow down, they just occupied the same space as the ships for a microsecond and then continued on their trajectory. "Impossible," Kyle whispered. "Nothing can phase through matter like that. It violates every law of physics we know." Lisa Grant's face was still on the view screen. "Your turn is over. Now it's ours." The human warships fired. But these weren't energy beams or plasma torpedoes. What came from their weapons looked like tears in space itself, dark purple streams that bent light around them. The streams hit the Council ships and something horrifying happened. Kyle watched as the warship nearest to him simply came apart. Not from the outside in like normal weapons would do. From the inside out. The ship's hull started bulging as if something was pushing from within. Then it exploded, but the debris was wrong. Twisted. The metal looked like it had been turned inside out. "Shields at maximum. Evasive maneuvers," Kyle ordered, but it was too late. One by one, his ships died. The human weapons ignored shields completely. They passed through the energy barriers like they didn't exist and tore the ships apart from within. Kyle's tactical officer was screaming damage reports, but they all said the same thing. Hull breaches from inside the ship. Reactors exploding without being hit. Crews dying as their own vessels turned into death traps. 90 seconds. That's how long it took for 40 Council warships to become floating debris. 90 seconds to destroy a fleet that had taken decades to build and crew. 90 seconds to show the galaxy that humanity was no longer prey. Kyle sat in his command throne, trembling. His flagship was the only ship left. Every other vessel in his fleet was gone. Thousands of crew members dead. The greatest military disaster in Council history, and he had led them into it. The view screen showed Commander Lisa Grant again. She looked at him with something that might have been pity. "Admiral Turner," she said, and Kyle was shocked she knew his name. "You're going to survive today. We're letting you live for a reason." "Why?" Kyle managed to ask, his voice barely a whisper. "Because you need to go home and tell them what happened here. You need to tell the Galactic Council that humans aren't the primitives you thought we were. 5 years ago, you attacked our civilians without provocation. You killed 2,000 people who never threatened you. We could have struck back immediately, but we didn't. We gave you time. Time to apologize. Time to make amends. You gave us nothing." Lisa Grant leaned forward slightly. "So we used that time to build something you've never seen before. These ships exist partially outside your reality. Your weapons can't touch us. Your sensors can barely see us. And our weapons will tear apart anything you send against us. We don't want to conquer the galaxy. We don't want your territory or your resources. We just want to be left alone." She paused, letting her words sink in. "Go home, Admiral. Tell the Council that if they ever threaten humanity again, we won't leave survivors next time. Tell them that Earth and all human colonies are now off limits. Tell them that the age of pushing humans around is over." The communication cut off. The black warships hung in space for a moment longer, and then they simply vanished. Not jumped to hyperspace. Not flew away. They just ceased to exist, as suddenly as they had appeared. Kyle sat alone on his bridge, surrounded by the debris of his fleet, and knew that everything had changed. The council chamber turned into complete madness the moment Kyle's footage started playing on their screens. Everyone could see it now, human warships that their most advanced sensors couldn't even detect. Weapons so powerful they made their defensive shields look like paper walls. Counselor Vex jumped from his seat, his voice breaking with fear. They were right there, in our space, flying around our planets, our homes. They were watching everything we did. His hands shook as he pointed at the screen, unable to process what he was seeing. Other council members started shouting over each other. Some were demanding answers. Others were calling for emergency evacuations of their homeworlds. A few just sat frozen in their chairs, staring at the images with blank expressions. Then President Hayes appeared on the main communication screen. He wasn't alone. Admiral Grant stood on his right side, her uniform crisp and her expression stone cold. General Stone was on his left, arms crossed, looking like he was ready for whatever came next. The three of them together sent a clear message: humanity was done playing games. Hayes didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The quiet way he spoke made every word hit harder. "You attacked our civilians without any warning, without any reason. Families were just traveling through space, and you opened fire on them." He paused, letting that sink in before continuing. "We could have wiped out every single one of your worlds. Our ships were already there. Our weapons were already aimed. One command from me, and this conversation wouldn't be happening right now." The council chamber went completely silent. You could have heard a pin drop. "But we didn't do that," Hayes continued. "We chose to show restraint. We chose to give you a chance. Now it's your turn to make a choice: sit down with us for real peace talks, or we finish what you started when you fired on our people." The council's Grand Marshal shot to his feet, his face red with anger and humiliation. "This is nothing but extortion. You're threatening us. This is not how civilized species conduct diplomacy." Hayes's expression didn't change at all. "No, Grand Marshal. This isn't extortion. These are consequences. You made decisions. You took actions. Now you deal with what comes from those actions. That's how the universe works." He leaned forward slightly, his eyes locked on the Grand Marshal. "You have 48 hours to decide. That's 2 of your standard days. Use them wisely." The screen went black. Hayes was gone. But his message wasn't. Because at that exact moment, every council homeworld reported the same thing. 50 dark matter warships were sitting in orbit around each planet. The ships were completely invisible to every sensor, every scanner, every detection system the council had. But they were absolutely there. Council military commanders were getting frantic reports from their home systems. Civilians were starting to panic on some worlds because word was spreading fast. There were human warships they couldn't see, weapons they couldn't stop, and technology they couldn't understand floating right above their heads. One counselor from a waterworld species stood up, his voice barely steady. How many ships do they have total? If there are 50 around each of our homeworlds, and we have 12 core worlds. He trailed off, doing the math in his head and not liking the answer. Another counselor, this one representing a silicon-based species, pulled up data on her tablet. Their casualty report from our attack listed 1 ship destroyed. Just 1. And they responded with this. She gestured helplessly at the screens still showing Kyle's footage on loop. What happens if we actually hurt them? Someone whispered. What if we really made them angry? Nobody had an answer for that. The Council had spent centuries believing they were the dominant force in the galaxy. They had the numbers. They had the territory. They had the resources. They thought that made them powerful. Now they were learning a hard lesson. True power wasn't about how many ships you had. It was about what those ships could actually do. And humanity's ships could do things the Council didn't even know were possible. The 48-hour countdown had started. The galaxy was holding its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. The treaty signing happened aboard humanity's flagship, the Prometheus. It was the biggest warship in the human fleet, and the Council delegates could feel that fact with every step they took through its corridors. Everything about the ship screamed advanced technology and raw power. Counselor Vex sat at the long table in the main conference room, staring down at the document in front of him. His hand shook so badly he could barely hold the pen. The terms were clear, and they weren't negotiable. Humanity had made that part very obvious. He took a deep breath and signed his name, watching the ink settle onto the page like it was sealing his people's fate. Admiral Grant stood near one of the large viewports, her arms crossed as she watched the scene outside. 50 dark matter warships hung in perfect formation around the Council's capital world below. They were visible now. Humanity had decided to let them be seen. It was a statement, a reminder of what could happen if anyone got stupid ideas. She glanced over at President Hayes, who was standing quietly nearby, also watching the ships. Do we really need to keep them there? She asked, keeping her voice low enough that only he could hear. The treaty is signed. They've agreed to everything. Hayes didn't take his eyes off the viewport. He nodded slowly. Until the ink dries and the peace actually holds, yes. Those ships stay exactly where they are. Grant understood, but she had to push a little. Some of the crew are saying it looks like we're occupying their worlds. We're not occupying anything, Hayes replied calmly. We're making sure everyone remembers how we got here. Fear brought them to this table, Admiral. They attacked our people, and fear of what we do next made them sign that paper. But it's respect that will keep them honest after we leave. They need to learn the difference. General Stone walked up to them, holding a tablet with incoming reports. He looked pleased, which was rare for him. Sir, we're getting confirmations from the outer colonies. The Council is actually honoring the trade agreements. Their military fleets are pulling back from the disputed zones like they promised. Hayes finally smiled. Just a little. Good. That's very good. Stone continued reading from the tablet. Their ambassadors are requesting permission to open formal diplomatic channels with our frontier settlements. Looks like they want to play nice now. Let them, Hayes said. But keep monitoring everything. Trust takes time to build. He turned away from the viewport and looked out at the vast stretch of stars beyond the ship. The galaxy suddenly felt different somehow. Bigger. More open. We didn't come out here looking for a fight, he said quietly. More to himself than anyone else. Humans just wanted to explore, to find new worlds, to meet new species and learn from them. He paused. But we finished what they started. And we finished it in a way nobody will forget. The dark matter warships stayed in orbit around the Council's homeworlds for 6 full months. Every single day, the Council leaders woke up and saw those ships hanging in their skies. Every day was a reminder that humanity could have chosen destruction but picked peace instead. When the ships finally phased away, disappearing back into whatever dimension they came from. Something fundamental had shifted across the galaxy. Humanity wasn't seen as the strongest species. That wasn't quite right. Plenty of species had more ships, bigger populations, or older civilizations. But humanity had become the one species that absolutely nobody wanted to test. Nobody wanted to find out what else humans had hidden in their arsenals. Nobody wanted to discover what other tricks and technologies they'd been developing in secret. The age of human expansion had truly begun. But it wasn't expansion through conquest or force. It was expansion through respect earned the hard way. Human colony ships started moving into new sectors without interference. Human trade vessels traveled freely through space lanes that used to be restricted. Human diplomats were suddenly welcome at tables where they'd been ignored before. Other species started coming to humanity with partnerships, with proposals, with requests for technology sharing and mutual defense agreements. Everyone wanted to be friends with the species that had rewritten the rules of warfare without actually going to war. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Humans were patient. Humans were reasonable. Humans preferred peace and cooperation. But if you pushed them, if you hurt their people, if you made them defend themselves, then you'd discover just how creative and terrifying humans could really be. And nobody wanted that lesson taught to them personally.